every day another strip of skin is torn off you, and you get to the point where you just can't really take it anymore.
Now, often influential, but often very, very underplayed. I think one of the most fascinating characters of the political world is the political spouse. They are so important. They are very, very important behind the scenes. They provide counsel. They're often that crucial sounding board, particularly when things get really, really tough for a prime minister or a political leader. Often you feel like you're in a world where everybody is coming for you. You don't know who to trust. And actually the person you really, really will turn to is your husband or your wife. And of course, we've seen that in action again this week with Keir Starmer spending the weekend before his resignation at Chequers, really mulling things over with his wife Vic at Chequers, and he paid tribute to her outside Downing Street on Monday.
And when I leave the biggest job in the country, I shall spend more time on the most important job, being the best husband I can to my fantastic wife Vic, who has been a rock by my side through good times and bad, and being the best dad I can to my beautiful children, who are my pride and my joy.
And you really heard that crack of emotion in his voice at that point. Now, somebody who knows the role of the Westminster wag, as she terms it, better than anyone is Sarah Vine. Sarah is a brilliant columnist and broadcaster. She's also the former wife of Michael Gove. And she's also written a really brilliant book about politics. And I read a lot of political books. I find this so fascinating. It's brilliantly written. It's also really honest about, life in politics, what it's like, the sort of treachery of politics as well, which I'm sure Keir Starmer and his wife are feeling very keenly this week. It was a Sunday Times bestseller. It's called How Not to Be a Political Wife, and it's just come out in paperback form this week. Sarah, welcome to the show. Thanks for joining us.
Oh, thank you for having me. I wish I could have been there in person, but I got completely stuck. I couldn't get to you. I was trying to get from West London to East London or wherever it is that you are, and it was just impossible. So I'm sorry.
No problem. It's a total meltdown on the tube. I'm scared because I'm having to get on the tube to go to West London later on. So I'm feeling quite scared. So look, tell us, first I want to start with, the event, I'll come on to your book, but I think hearing Keir Starmer talking about his wife, they're hearing that crack in his voice. I mean, did you feel sad for him at that point? Did you feel empathy for him and Vic at that point?
I mean, I have to say, I felt quite sorry for him this week. I think it's so difficult to be Prime Minister in this day and age. And I think that he tried his best, and so I'm not a Starmer hater. I just think it's impossible. But I do think that I saw that his wife was slightly teary as well, and I wondered if they were just sort of tears of joy because finally this whole nightmare is over for her, and she can go back to having a relatively normal existence. It is very disruptive, and I think it's very, very difficult. One of the things that I found really hard when I was married to Michael was seeing the person that you love just being completely ripped to shreds pretty much every day of their working life, and the things that people would say about him. And one person, famous comedian, once compared him to a fetus in a jar, and really kind of horrible ad hominem attacks. And it gets to you after a while. You start off and you're quite sort of bumptious and resilient, and you think, oh, this is going to be fine, we're going to be, and it just every day another strip of skin is torn off you, and you get to the point where you just can't really take it anymore. And for the kids, I think it's particularly difficult. I think my two had a really rough time because there's a sort of natural kind of left-wing bias in schools and stuff like that. So they were the kids of a Tory minister. I don't know what it's like being the kids of a Labour politician. Maybe it's slightly different. Maybe it's a bit cooler. I don't know. It was very
I suspect probably not. Given averages, I suspect probably not. And look, how does that sort of feel when, as you say, when you're in the eye of the storm? And I think, look, we've never been deferential to our political leaders, and that's one of the great things about British culture and British society. We always have a healthy scepticism of power, and we use humour, we use mockery and satire often to bring people down. But as you say, it has really become unbelievably vicious over many, I'd say, the last sort of few decades. But also you have that thing when you are in, and you describe this so brilliantly in your book, when you're in that goldfish bowl of Westminster and you're in a prominent position, you've got the media being horrible, you've got social media being horrible, you've got the sort of security threat element, but also you have people who you thought were your ride or die friends sort of turning on you, and sometimes you feel like there's nobody left. I mean, what does that feel like when you kind of think you can't really trust anybody?
Yeah, no, it's very frightening and quite lonely, I think. And you do start to doubt your own sanity. I certainly did start to doubt my own sanity, because it is because you know the everything filters down, and then people who you think, like in my case, it was my family. They suddenly started to believe all the things that were being said or written that were not true, or kind of only half true, or just a bit of an embellishment. Do you know what I mean? And you think to yourself, well, gosh, you know, who is there? Who's got our back? Who's got and you start to lose trust in people, and you start to lose faith in people, and that becomes quite difficult. And if you're a sort of marshmallowy person like me, and you're a people pleaser and you want everyone to like you, that's very hard. I think if you're a bit more hard-edged, then it's easier to handle. But I think, you know, at the end of the day, politicians, I mean, that's really what this book is about. It's trying to show people the sort of people behind the politics, if you know what I mean, that they're all just human beings, and that they make mistakes, they make bad decisions, they get upset, all of the things that ordinary people do in their lives. They don't just not happen because you're in politics.
And look, I think a lot of people are, I mean, look, Keir Starmer was clearly unpopular, but a lot of people, a lot of our listeners are still quite shocked that we have now got rid of our sixth Prime Minister in 10 years. I mean, obviously, in your book, you've made, I think, an incredibly human and really open and quite a raw, honest and quite a vulnerable story about your own story with Michael, how you felt, what it's like having all of that abuse. And you make I think your book makes a powerful argument to treat people in a more humane way. Political leaders of all across the spectrum are still human beings at the end of the day. Yet you and I operate we're both journalists, we're broadcasters, you and I are often paired together. I think we're a fabulous double act, by the way. I always love being on with you. But we also operate in a political a media climate which is quite vicious to people. You know, you yourself are you know, you're pretty tough with people as well. What responsibility do you think we in the media have contributing to this sort of climate of real kind of hatred and vitriol towards politicians and their families?
Well, I think a lot of it comes, to be honest, I think a lot of it comes from social media. And I think that was the trigger for things escalating, because the problem with social media is that, you know, it's anonymous, a lot of it. So you can say what you like. And also there's no accountability. And people do and say exactly what they want. And they say things that are really, really, really vile. And I think that creates an atmosphere where the threshold is lowered, if you see what I mean. So you know, in a way, you become a bit desensitized to it. You desensitize to it. You know, it becomes, it's a bit like what's happened. We've had this conversation lots of times, Ayesha. It's a bit like what's happened with online porn. Suddenly, something that is actually completely outrageous and really not very nice has sort of become normal. People just sort of accept that it exists, and then we just have to live with it. And the same thing has happened, in a way, in politics, which is that the vitriol and the anger and the polarization and the total lack of kind of boundaries, any sort of social more, which you get on social media, because you're not actually standing in front of the person and you're not seeing their eyes well up or their bottom lip tremble, and you're not seeing them as a human, you're just seeing them as a, you know, as a thing. And that has led to the general conversation, I think, just becoming much less considerate. People have forgot how to have civilized arguments.
Do you think there's any way back, or do you think we're just now in this sort of spiral where it's just going to get more and more vicious?
It's really, it's a really good question, and I find it very depressing, and I think about this a lot, and it scares me and it worries me for my kids and stuff. And I think, you know, it's all, we all have to make an effort to try and keep this thing under control, because otherwise it's just going to be like George Orwell's 3 minutes of rage or 2 minutes of rage or whatever it was. I can't remember. I'm sure your listeners are more erudite than me, and they'll remember the exact reference. But do you know what I mean? It's just feral, and it's vicious, and it's totally unnecessary actually, and it's completely counterproductive, and it leads to all others. I mean, it's not just politicians who get it. It's women who get it on the internet. It's it's people of color. It's immigrants. It's everything. It's anyone that people decide they don't like for whatever reason, and they just don't seem to have any barrier to it, and it makes for a very, very toxic environment.
And look, I think social media is often kind of shaped by what influencers think and political people who have influence, and many of those people are political. Do you think it is time for politicians not to sort of pull their punches, but sort of think a bit more carefully in terms of, and I think this is across the political spectrum, like left, right, whatever, just to sort of think a little bit more in terms of how they frame their opponents, how they do their political attacks?
Yeah, I mean, I think back to when Donald Trump, started posting stuff on the internet, and we were all kind of, why is the president of the United States of America got a Twitter feed? What's he doing? And that felt really weird back then. But now all of them have it. They all say stuff on Twitter. We've seen Andy Burnham this week having a go at Kemi because of something she said to the education secretary.
Although his comeback was very funny. She had
it was very funny.
It was very funny. It was good. It wasn't like nasty.
No, but I mean, but the point is that it is the platform that they use now. They, more so. I think probably you find that more people would know what was going on the internet, on social media politically, than they would, say, for example, in the House of Commons. Do you know what I mean? The whole emphasis has shifted. So I think it's very difficult. It's a very, because it cuts out the middleman. It totally allows you to talk directly to your public, and that for any politician, because all politicians are ultimately narcissists, because you have to be in order to do that job, because you have to have such faith in yourself. It's just an absolute trap. They can't stay off.
Yeah, it is. It's like catnip. I think that's very true. Now, one of our listeners just messaged in saying, and this is sort of challenge question to you, saying that you have written about political women in the past. You wrote about Cherie Blair on numerous occasions, describing her as the Lady Macbeth of New Labour, describing her as the most Marmite woman in British politics. Do you ever look back and regret what you've written about other women in politics, political spouses?
I mean, obviously, yes. But, I've been a journalist since I was 22 or something. So I'm now 59. So there's quite a lot of water under the bridge. And, like everybody in life.
Oh, we had a little bit of a blip on your line there, Sarah. Sarah's line just went a little bit blippy. Let's see if we can get her.
Am I back?
Yes, you're back. Yeah, you're
cool.
back.
Sorry, I don't know. That must have been some sort of bolt from above.
Yeah, it was divine intervention. That was exactly. A big man upstairs, Sarah, going, come on now, Sarah.
Come on. Him hitting me on the head. But no, I have said things in the past that I would probably regret. But I've written thousands, millions of words, and so we learn. It's a journey. I've learned a lot in the last 10 years, particularly. And that's what life is about. It's about learning from your mistakes and trying to sort of direct them.
And look, I think what's so great about your book is that, lots of books are political books. Also, there's not loads of brilliant political books written by women. So it's good. That's another reason why I really, really enjoyed your book. And, you're not doing a sort of, here's my place in history, here's all the great... You're really honest about how hard it was, and you talk, I think, quite movingly about friendships that were really dear to you, particularly with the Cameron, Sam Cam. You were very close with her, and then because of Brexit, so we just had 10-year anniversary of Brexit. I still think it was a mistake, Sarah, but let's move it. Let's not have a punch up about that. But, that was a very difficult moment for you. Look, Andy Burnham's wife is now going to be under a lot of scrutiny. Marie-France Van Heel, she has really tried to stay out of the limelight. I think she's had some quite mean things written about her in the past. Keir Starmer's wife Vic really stayed out of the limelight. What's your advice to the modern political spouse entering this, pretty tough arena?
I mean, I would say just don't engage with any of it, number one. Don't read it. Don't look at it. Don't look at the comments underneath the articles about you. Don't look at what people say about you on the internet. Just try and protect yourself from it. And remember that, it's all just seen through various people's kind of very, very partisan lenses. And they will say all sorts of things about you. And most of it will be harmless. One or two things will really get to you. I mean, I remember once someone, a comedian called what's he called? Lee. Stuart Lee.
Oh yes, I know
wrote
Stuart.
wrote an article in the Observer saying that I was having sex with me would be like having sex with a dead pig, and that was one moment where I found that I thought, well, that's a bit of a line that's been crossed. But you just have to understand that it's in the nature of the business. You will have to put up with a lot of this stuff.
Would you countenance them? I think they made a very conscious decision, Keir Starmer's team, I think was the right decision, to not court publicity, to not do the sort of hello at home photo shoot and all the intimate interviews. I think personally that's the right thing to do. Do you?
I agree. I think that's completely right, because you can't win. You absolutely can't win. So you will think, oh, this is good. They all, because what happens is you get constantly asked to do stuff and you say no. And then someone says to you, well, if you just do this one thing, all of that will just go away. And it just won't, because it will actually just get worse, because you'll feed the beast. Never feed the beast. That's my advice to any political wife. Don't feed the beast.
Well, and final question, in terms of the sort of political spouse, it's funny how America really sort of lionizes the first lady, and it does tend to be a first lady. Do you think we'll ever have a situation where we'll do that in this country? I hope we don't, but do you think our culture is just completely different?
I think it is very different. I think the thing is, America being the sort of first lady is a whole job in itself, and it has quite a well-defined role, which I think in a funny kind of way makes it easier, because you've just got an office and you've got stuff that you have to do, and there's a position for you. And I think because then there's a protocol. There's a list of things that you've got to do, because that's what you've got to do when you're married to the president, and you just do them. And in a funny kind of a way, it's sort of easier, but I don't think we'll do that in this country. I think there's a generally, there's a sense that, well, if you're not elected, then why would you be doing any of these things? And just being married to someone doesn't give you that privilege, as it were.
Yeah, I agree. Lots of messages coming through. Susan makes a really good point, saying why, when a man's voice breaks with emotion, it's seen as, isn't he a fine chap? And when it's a woman like Thatcher or May, it's mocked and satirised. I think that's a really good point, Susan. Kate says she thought Cherie Blair came across very well in that Tony Blair documentary. A lot of people saying that they think Cherie Blair is a very good woman. And Simon says, this is a kind of pointless conversation, because you're talking about stuff that's going to be talked about because of the industry we're in. Thanks for that, Simon. Thanks for that. Thanks for taking the time to message in saying this is a pointless conversation. I didn't think it was a pointless. Sorry, Simon.
Maybe you could send us some suggestions for more interesting conversations.
Yes, well, lots of other people have messaged in saying this is a really interesting conversation. It's good to have a sort of more honest conversation about the difficult aspects of being in the public eye. Sarah, thank you so much for your time. I've absolutely love your book. I think it should be essential reading for anybody that wants to go into politics, and their spouses as well. Thanks very much for your time.
Thank you, Ayesha.